Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. The night settles peacefully over Hogwarts. A gentle breeze whispers through the stone towers, carrying a deep sense of tranquility. Beneath the soft glow of flickering candlelight, a story waits to be told. This is not just a tale of magic and adventure. It is a journey where courage is tested, friendships grow stronger, and hidden truths are finally revealed. Imagine yourself walking through the quiet halls of the castle, the sound of your footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor. The night air carries the scent of old books and melted wax. Somewhere deep beneath Hogwarts, a long-forgotten secret lies waiting to be uncovered. Alongside Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger, we will step into the shadows of the underground, searching for the legendary red stone before it falls into the wrong hands. Traps, mysteries, and darkness lie ahead, but in the stillness of this night, let this story unfold slowly, guiding you into sleep. Welcome to the legend of the Red Stone. The Hogwarts Library at night was a world of its own. The dim candlelight flickered against the ancient bookshelves, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the stone walls. The scent of old parchment and ink lingered in the air, a reminder of the countless generations of students who had once studied in this very place. It was well past curfew, and the only sound that broke the silence was the occasional rustle of pages as Ron and I sifted through a stack of dusty tomes in the restricted section. "I still don't understand why you dragged me into this," Ron muttered, his voice barely above a whisper as he turned a yellow page. "If Filch catches us, we'll be serving detention for the rest of the year." I smirked. "Oh, come on, Ron. You know you love a bit of adventure." Besides, Hermione swore she saw something about a powerful artifact hidden somewhere in Hogwarts. "Aren't you curious?" Ron sighed, rubbing his eyes. "Curious? No. But I do know that if we don't find something soon, I'm going to fall asleep right here." I was about to respond when my eyes landed on a particularly thick, leather-bound book resting on the shelf above me. Its spine was cracked with age, and the gold lettering had long since faded, but something about it drew me in. Carefully, I reached up and pulled it down, feeling the weight of centuries in my hands. The moment I opened it, a thin layer of dust swirled into the air, making Ron cough. "Blimey, this thing is older than Dumbledore," he muttered, waving his hand in front of his face. Ignoring him, I turned the pages slowly, scanning the text. The handwriting was elegant but faded, the ink barely legible in places. Then, on one of the last pages, I saw it, the mention of a Batamera, or the Red Stone. My heart skipped a beat as I traced the words with my finger. "Ron, look at this," I whispered urgently, angling the book so he could see. His blue eyes narrowed as he leaned in. Batamera, a legendary artifact said to grant immense power to its wielder. Hidden deep beneath the foundations of Hogwarts, locked away to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands, he read aloud. I exchanged a look with him. There was something thrilling about discovering a lost piece of history, a secret buried within the walls of Hogwarts itself. But what made my stomach twist with unease was the next line. It is said that those who seek the Badamira with ill intent shall find themselves lost to darkness. Ron swallowed. That's ominous. Yeah, I agreed, but the thrill of adventure was too strong to ignore. But this could be huge, Ron. If it's real, and it's still somewhere in Hogwarts. Before I could finish, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor outside. Ron tensed, his face paling. Filch. We both froze, barely daring to breathe as the footsteps grew louder. My heart pounded in my chest. If we were caught, there would be no talking our way out of this. I quickly shut the book and shoved it under my cloak just as the shadow of Filch's lantern flickered against the library door. A second later, the old caretaker's grumbling voice drifted through the crack in the door. I know someone's in there. I can smell the rule breaking. Ron gave me a panicked look. I motioned for him to stay silent. The door creaked as Filch pushed it open just an inch. My fingers twitched toward my wand, just in case. His lantern's light skinned the library, illuminating rows upon rows of books, but thankfully, we were tucked into a dark corner between towering shelves. For a moment, I was sure he would step inside. The air was thick with tension. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Mrs. Norris let out a low, eerie meow from the hallway. Bah, Filch muttered. Must have been the rats again. With one last suspicious glance, he turned and shuffled away, his footsteps fading down the corridor. Ron let out a breath of relief, collapsing against the bookshelf. I swear, one day my heart's going to give out because of you. I grinned. But that day isn't today. Come on, let's get out of here before he changes his mind. With the book safely tucked beneath my robes, we slipped out of the library, moving as quietly as we could through the dimly lit halls of Hogwarts. The castle had always felt different at night, more alive, somehow. The torches flickered against the cold stone walls, casting eerie shadows that seemed to shift as we passed. As we neared the Gryffindor common room, Ron suddenly grabbed my arm. Wait. What if someone else is after the Badamira? I frowned. What do you mean? Well, he said, lowering his voice, we both know Hogwarts has seen its fair share of dark wizards. And if this book has information on the stone, who's to say someone else hasn't found out about it? I hadn't considered that. But now, as the thought settled in my mind, I felt a shiver run down my spine. If Badamira truly existed, then surely we weren't the only ones looking for it. Just then, a cold gust of wind rushed down the corridor, snuffing out one of the torches. The sudden darkness made my skin prickle, but it wasn't the chill that sent a spike of fear through me. It was the whisper. A low, sinister whisper that seemed to echo from the very walls themselves. My breath caught. Did you hear that? Ron nodded slowly, his face tense. Yeah. And I don't think we're alone. We turned toward the shadows at the end of the corridor. At first, there was nothing but darkness. But then, just for a second, I saw it. A figure, tall and shrouded in black, watching us from the end of the hall. Then, Just as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. A chill ran through me. We needed to find the Batamera, and fast. The Gryffindor common room was warm and comforting, but neither Ron nor I could shake the uneasy feeling that had settled over us since leaving the library. The fire crackled in the hearth, sending flickering light dancing across the room, but all I could think about was the shadowy figure we had seen in the corridor. Ron sat on the couch across from me, drumming his fingers on his knee. His face was pale, his usual carefree expression replaced by something closer to worry. "So, let's say this Batamera is real," he muttered, keeping his voice low so the few remaining students in the common room wouldn't overhear. "What's the plan?" I pulled the old book from beneath my robes and placed it on the table between us. The cover was worn and cracked, the leather peeling at the edges. First, we need to figure out where exactly it's hidden. The book mentioned something about it being beneath Hogwarts, but Hogwarts is huge. It could be anywhere. Ron frowned, rubbing his chin. And let's not forget, someone else is looking for it, too. He shuddered slightly. That whisper back there, it wasn't normal. And that shadow. I nodded. I know. Which is why we need to act fast. I flipped through the book, scanning the pages for anything that might give us a clue. There has to be more information here. We spent the next hour reading, our fingers tracing over the delicate ink. Most of it was historical accounts, mentions of how the Batamera was supposedly created by an ancient sorcerer, stories of how it had been used in past wars before it was finally sealed away. But then, finally, I found something promising. "Look at this," I said, pointing to a passage near the bottom of a page. Ron leaned in, squinting at the faded text. "The key to the stone lies within the castle's very foundation, where knowledge is hidden and truth is revealed only to those who seek it." Ron scratched his head. "That's incredibly vague." I let out a sigh. "Yeah, but think about it. Where's knowledge hidden in Hogwarts?" His eyes widened slightly. "The library." I shook my head. "Not just the library. The restricted section." Ron groaned. "Oh, come on. We just barely got out of there." I smirked. "I thought you liked adventure." "Not when it involves getting caught by Filch and spending the next 6 months cleaning the trophy room." I chuckled but didn't argue. Instead, I turned back to the book, studying the text more closely. Wait, there's something else here. At the very bottom of the page, there was a faint, almost invisible mark, like a stain, but more deliberate. I ran my fingers over it, and as I did, the ink on the page shimmered slightly. Ron's eyes widened. "Did you see that?" I nodded. Without thinking, I reached for my wand. Apparitium. The hidden ink glowed for a moment before revealing new words, ones that hadn't been there before. "The path to the Batamera begins where history is kept, beyond the eye's reach. Seek the record of secrets, and you shall find the way." Ron's mouth fell open. A hidden message? This just keeps getting weirder. I felt my pulse quicken. It's leading us somewhere. The record of secrets, could that mean? Ron's face suddenly lit up with realization. The headmaster's office. I blinked. What? He sat up straighter. Think about it. The headmasters of Hogwarts have always kept records of important magical artifacts, right? If there's any mention of the Bedtime, it would be in Dumbledore's old records. It made sense. The headmaster's office was where the most classified knowledge was stored: magical artifacts, forbidden spells, and the history of Hogwarts itself. But there was one problem. How exactly do you plan to get into the headmaster's office? I asked. Ron's face fell. Oh, right. That. It wasn't as simple as just sneaking in. The headmaster's office was heavily protected, and the entrance required a password. Without it, we wouldn't even get past the gargoyle guarding the staircase. We sat in silence for a moment, thinking. Then, suddenly, Ron snapped his fingers. McGonagall. I frowned. What about her? She's the headmistress now, yeah? And she's strict, but she's fair. If we tell her what we found. No way, I interrupted. Ron, think about it. We tell McGonagall, and she'll either lock that book away or make sure we never get anywhere near the Bedtime. This is something we have to do ourselves. Ron groaned. I had a feeling you'd say that. I grinned. It's why you keep hanging out with me, isn't it? He rolled his eyes, but didn't argue. All right, I said, leaning forward. So, we need a way into the headmaster's office. And we need it fast. Ron tapped his fingers against the table. Maybe there's another way in? I thought for a moment. The office's main entrance was guarded, but Hogwarts was full of secret passageways. If there was another entrance, it had to be somewhere in the castle's old blueprints. Hermione, I said suddenly. Ron looked confused. What about her? She's spent more time studying Hogwarts than anyone we know. If there's a secret passage into the headmaster's office, she would know about it. Ron made a face. She's going to kill us for sneaking into the restricted section again. Probably. With that, we quickly gathered our things and left the common room. The castle was quiet at this hour, the corridors empty except for the occasional ghost drifting through the halls. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, but the hall behind us was empty. Still, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Ron must have sensed it too because he muttered, I don't like this. Feels like someone's breathing down my neck. We quickened our pace. Soon, we reached the corridor leading to the Ravenclaw common room where Hermione was likely still studying. Sure enough, we found her sitting on the floor outside, surrounded by a small stack of books. She looked up as we approached, immediately narrowing her eyes. What are you two up to? Ron and I exchanged a glance before I took a deep breath and said, We need your help. Hermione sighed, closing her book. Why do I feel like I'm going to regret this? I sat down beside her and placed the old book between us. Because you probably will. As I began explaining everything, the Bedtime, the secret message in the book, and our need to get into the headmaster's office, I noticed Hermione's expression change from suspicion to curiosity. By the time I finished, she was frowning in deep thought. "You're right about one thing," she said finally. "If there's a mention of the Batamera anywhere, it would be in the headmaster's records." Ron looked hopeful. "So you'll help us?" Hermione let out a long sigh. "I suppose I don't have a choice, do I?" I grinned. "Not really." She shot me a look before continuing. "All right. There might be a way in, but it's dangerous." Ron groaned. "Of course it is." I leaned forward. "Tell us." Hermione glanced around to make sure no one was listening before lowering her voice. "There's an old entrance," she whispered. "One that hasn't been used in centuries." And with those words, our real journey began. The three of us huddled together in the dimly lit corridor, Hermione's voice barely above a whisper as she told us about the secret passage leading into the headmaster's office. My heart pounded in anticipation, but there was also a nagging sense of unease. Whoever the shadowy figure in the corridor had been, they knew we were searching for the Batamera. And if they were listening now, we were already at a disadvantage. "The passage was built centuries ago," Hermione explained, glancing around as if expecting Filch to jump out at any moment. "It was meant as an emergency exit for headmasters in case of danger, but over time it was forgotten, probably because they reinforced the security of the main entrance." Ron looked skeptical. "And how do you know about this?" Hermione crossed her arms. "Because I read, Ronald. Hogwarts, a history has an entire section on secret architectural changes made in the past 1,000 years. Most of the passages were sealed off, but this one was never properly closed, just hidden." I nodded, intrigued. "So where is it?" Hermione hesitated, then gestured for us to follow her. "It's near the old classrooms on the 7th floor. But I should warn you, it won't be easy to access." Ron sighed. "Of course it won't." We moved cautiously through the castle, taking care to avoid patrolling prefects and Filch's ever-watchful cat, Mrs. Norris. The deeper we went into the castle's quieter halls, the heavier the air seemed to become. The torches flickered strangely, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching us. After several tense minutes, we arrived at a long, deserted corridor on the 7th floor. The walls were lined with dust-covered portraits, most of which were sleeping, their soft snores echoing through the quiet hallway. At the end of the corridor stood an old stone archway, half hidden behind a towering suit of armor. Hermione gestured toward it. "It should be right behind there." Ron frowned. "So how do we get in?" Hermione pulled out her wand and took a deep breath. "There should be a triggering mechanism, some kind of magical seal. Let's see if this works." She pointed her wand at the wall beside the archway and murmured, "Revelio." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the dust and grime that had settled on the stone over the years began to shift, revealing faint, glowing runes etched into the surface. The symbols pulsed softly, as if awakened from a long slumber. Ron whistled. "Blimey. That's some serious magic. Hermione nodded, studying the runes carefully. It looks like a warding spell. We need the correct counter charm to disable it. I stepped closer, tracing one of the symbols with my finger. The moment my skin made contact, a sharp chill shot up my arm, and the rune flashed a deep red. I yanked my hand back just as the suit of armor beside us groaned and moved. Ron stumbled backward. Oh, that's not good. With a loud clang, the suit of armor raised its massive sword, its hollow helmet tilting as if studying us. Then, without warning, it swung. We barely had time to react. The blade whooshed through the air, narrowly missing my shoulder as I dove to the side. Ron yelped and scrambled backward, while Hermione raised her wand and shouted, "Expelliarmus!" The spell hit the armor square in the chest, but instead of disarming it, the force only made it stagger. It quickly regained balance and turned toward Hermione, sword raised again. "Okay, new plan," Ron shouted. "Run!" We darted down the corridor, the enchanted armor clanking after us with surprising speed. My heart pounded as I skidded around a corner, nearly tripping over a loose stone. Ron was right beside me, breathing hard. "Tell me there's another way in." Hermione, a few steps ahead, suddenly veered left toward an alcove. "There is, but we have to reach it before that thing catches us." The armor let out a metallic groan, its heavy steps echoing behind us. It wasn't going to stop until we were either gone or incapacitated. Just when I thought we were out of options, Hermione stopped abruptly in front of a blank wall. I skidded to a halt. "Hermione, what?" "No time to explain," she said quickly. "Both of you, put your hands on the wall. Now!" Ron and I didn't question it. As soon as our palms touched the cold stone, the air shimmered around us. A low rumble filled the corridor, and suddenly the wall melted away, revealing a narrow stone passage leading into darkness. Without hesitation, we rushed inside. The moment we were through, the entrance sealed shut behind us, muffling the sound of the armor's heavy footsteps. For a moment, we just stood there, catching our breath. The passage was narrow and barely lit, with thick cobwebs clinging to the ceiling. The air was damp and carried the faint scent of old parchment and something earthy. Ron bent over, panting. "You could have warned us before pulling that trick." Hermione gave him an exasperated look. "Would you have believed me?" Ron opened his mouth, then closed it. "Fair point." I stepped forward, letting my eyes adjust to the dimness. The passage sloped downward, deeper into the castle's foundations. "Where does this lead?" Hermione dusted off her robes. "Straight to the back of the headmaster's office. Or, at least, that's what the records say." Ron made a face. "I don't like how you said 'at least.'" I ignored him and pressed on, wand raised. The deeper we went, the quieter the castle above seemed to become. The stone walls were old, far older than the rest of Hogwarts. This wasn't just some forgotten hallway. This place felt ancient. Something shifted in the darkness ahead. I stopped abruptly, holding up a hand. Ron and Hermione froze behind me. What is it? Ron whispered. I narrowed my eyes, straining to see. The shadows ahead were too thick, almost unnaturally so. It was as if the passage itself was swallowing the light. Then, a whisper. A real whisper, curling through the air like smoke. Low, cold, and wrong. Not yours. My breath caught in my throat. My fingers tightened around my wand. Did you hear that? Hermione nodded, her face pale. Ron swallowed hard. Please tell me that was just the wind. A second whisper, closer this time. Turn back. And then movement. Something darted between the shadows ahead, too fast to see clearly. A flicker of black robes, a glint of something metallic. And then, silence. The three of us stood frozen. My heart hammered against my ribs. Whatever was down here, it wasn't just an illusion. It was waiting for us. The whisper still lingered in the cold air, curling around us like unseen fingers. My grip on my wand tightened as my pulse raced. Whatever was down here, whoever was down here, was watching us. Ron swallowed hard. Okay. Yeah. This was a terrible idea. Hermione didn't argue this time. Her usual logical confidence was replaced by the same unease that crept through my veins. We have to move forward, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Standing here will only make us more vulnerable. I nodded, though every instinct screamed at me to turn back. But we couldn't. The Batamera was too important. If Bellatrix was looking for it, then we couldn't afford to waste a single second. Lumos, I murmured. The tip of my wand flared to life, casting long shadows along the damp stone walls. The passage ahead was narrow, the darkness almost pressing against the light as if trying to smother it. I took a cautious step forward, Hermione and Ron close behind. As we moved deeper, the air grew colder. My breath came out in small puffs, vanishing into the thick gloom. The further we went, the more the passage felt unnatural. The stone beneath our feet was too smooth, the silence too absolute. No dripping water. No shifting stone. Just nothing. Ron muttered, "Why do I feel like we're walking into a bloody tomb?" I didn't answer. Ahead of us, the passage sloped downward, leading to an open chamber. My one light barely reached the edges of the room, but I could make out archways leading into even deeper tunnels. The air smelled ancient, like dust, and time itself had settled here undisturbed. Hermione cautiously stepped forward. "This isn't in Hogwarts, a history." Ron snorted. "Of course it isn't. You think they'd write about the creepy underground death tunnel?" Ignoring him, I scanned the chamber. The walls were lined with symbols, carved deep into the stone. Some looked like ancient runes, but others were completely unfamiliar. Swirling patterns that seemed to shift when I tried to focus on them. Hermione traced a finger over one of the symbols. "These look old. Older than Hogwarts." Ron groaned. "Why is it always ancient magic? Can't we ever deal with something simple, like, I don't know, a lost key?" I took a slow step forward, trying to steady my breathing. The sense of rawness in the air hadn't faded. If anything, it was stronger here. Then, something moved. A soft, almost imperceptible rustle. I froze. Hermione's head snapped up. Ron let out a strangled noise. From the far end of the chamber, the shadows shifted. For a moment, I thought it was a trick of the light. But then the darkness coiled, like mist, but thicker. Alive. And then, a figure stepped forward. A tall, hooded figure, its robes blending with the darkness itself. Its face was hidden in the shadows of its hood, but I could feel its eyes, cold, piercing, watching. I gripped my wand. "Who are you?" The figure didn't respond. It simply tilted its head, as if studying us. Then, in a voice that sent icy fingers down my spine, it whispered, "You should not be here." The words weren't a threat. They weren't a warning. They were a fact. Ron took an uneasy step backward. "Okay. We've seen the spooky shadow thing. Maybe we should." Before he could finish, the figure moved. Not walked, moved. One moment it was standing across the chamber. The next, it was closer. A breath away. I reacted instinctively. Stupefy. The red jet of light shot forward, only to be swallowed by the darkness around the figure. It absorbed the spell like a sponge, the energy vanishing into the void. My blood turned to ice. The figure raised one thin, pale hand. The darkness around it stirred, tendrils of shadow stretching toward us like reaching fingers. Hermione's voice rang out. "Protego!" A shimmering shield of light burst to life in front of us, blocking the approaching darkness. The figure didn't react, but the air around us tightened, as if reality itself was holding its breath. Then, the whisper came again. This time, it wasn't from the figure. It was all around us. "Leave. Now." The walls trembled. The air vibrated with unseen energy. I didn't know what this thing was. A ghost? A cursed guardian? Something older? Whatever it was, we were not supposed to be here. "We can't fight it," Hermione whispered urgently. "We have to go, now." Ron didn't argue. We turned and ran, bolting back toward the passage. The shadows surged behind us, stretching like clawing hands. The moment we crossed the threshold back into the tunnel, the air snapped, like a rubber band being pulled too far and suddenly released. The whispering stopped. The darkness retracted, as if the entity couldn't follow beyond the chamber. Panting, we collapsed against the wall, our hearts hammering. Ron was the first to speak. "I hate everything about that." Hermione's hands were trembling slightly, but she took a deep breath and composed herself. That was not normal dark magic. I stared back down the tunnel, my mind racing. That thing, it hadn't attacked outright. It had been guarding something. "The Batamara is down there," I said, my voice firm despite the lingering fear. That thing was protecting it. Hermione nodded grimly. and it didn't want us anywhere near it. Ron wiped a hand down his face. So, what now? We just walk back in there and ask nicely for the stone? I shook my head. No. But there's another way. I turned to Hermione. There has to be something about this entity in the old records. Spells, counter curses, anything that can get us past it. Hermione hesitated. The headmaster's records might have something, but I don't know if there's a way to fight something like that. Ron groaned. Brilliant. So we're up against a shadow monster that eats spells and gives really creepy warnings. Fantastic. I exhaled slowly. We're not backing down. We know where the Batamera is now. We just have to find a way to reach it before Bellatrix does. Hermione looked troubled, but she nodded. Then we need to hurry. With that, we turned and made our way back through the passage, leaving the whispering darkness behind us. For now, our footsteps echoed through the narrow stone passage as we made our way back toward Hogwarts' main halls. My mind was still racing from what we had just encountered. The shadow entity, or whatever it was, hadn't just been a guardian, it had been something far older, far more powerful than anything we had ever faced before. The way it absorbed my spells so effortlessly sent a chill through my bones. How were we supposed to defeat something that magic couldn't even touch? We need answers, I said, glancing at Hermione. Fast. She nodded, adjusting her grip on her wand. The headmaster's office holds centuries worth of magical records. If there's anything about that entity, or the Batamera, it'll be there. Ron frowned. And how do we get in? Last time I checked, we don't exactly have permission to waltz into Dumbledore's old office. Hermione gave him a sharp look. There's always a way. Ron groaned. Why do I feel like I'm not gonna like this? We emerged from the passage into a quiet hallway near the grand staircase. The castle was mostly asleep at this hour, the torches flickering gently against the ancient stone. Still, we moved cautiously, staying close to the walls and avoiding any open corridors. The last thing we needed was Filch catching us sneaking around. The headmaster's office was located on the 3rd floor, past a statue of a griffin that served as a magical entrance. The problem? It was warded, protected by spells that only allowed entry with the current headmaster's approval. And the current headmaster, Professor McGonagall, would definitely not approve of what we were about to do. When we reached the statue, Ron let out a defeated sigh. Right. Anyone know the password? Hermione pursed her lips, deep in thought. McGonagall's passwords are usually related to transfiguration. Maybe something connected to her animagus form? Ron snapped his fingers. Try Tabby Cat. Hermione rolled her eyes, but turned to the griffin statue. Tabby Cat? Nothing. Ron shrugged. Worth a shot. I tapped my chin. What about something in Latin? She likes traditional magic. Hermione thought for a moment. Then, with quiet confidence, she said, Fidelis Feels. The griffin statue stirred. With a low, grinding sound, it rotated, revealing the winding spiral staircase beyond. Ron's jaw dropped. Wait, that actually worked? Hermione smirked. It means loyal cat in Latin. It made sense. Ron muttered, "You scare me sometimes." We hurried up the stairs before the entrance could close behind us. The headmaster's office was just as grand as I remembered, towering bookshelves, intricate silver instruments, and the large, ornate desk where Dumbledore himself had once sat. The air smelled of parchment, old wood, and faint traces of incense. Ron looked around. "All right, where do we start?" Hermione didn't hesitate. She rushed to the nearest shelf labeled historical artifacts and dark relics and started pulling out massive tomes. I followed her lead, scanning for anything related to ancient magical guardians. My fingers brushed over book titles, cursed objects through the ages, the lost arts of rune magic, forbidden secrets of the wizarding world. Nothing directly about the Batamera, but plenty about old magic. Ron, meanwhile, had decided on a different approach, rummaging through the desk drawers. "Hey," he called suddenly. "There's something here." We rushed over. Ron had found an old journal, its leather cover worn with age. The initials AD were carved into the front. "Dumbledore's journal?" I whispered. Hermione carefully flipped through the pages, scanning the aged parchment. Then, her eyes widened. "Listen to this," she said, reading aloud. "There are artifacts in this world that predate our understanding of magic. Relics forged not by wizards, but by forces beyond our comprehension. Some call them gifts. Others call them curses. But one thing is certain, these objects do not belong in the wrong hands. The Batamera is one such artifact. Its origins are unknown, but its power is undeniable. Legends speak of a guardian that watches over it, one that cannot be defeated by conventional means. It does not attack, nor does it harm unless provoked. It exists to protect, to warn, to judge those who seek the stone. But there are whispers of another way. The guardian is bound by the magic that created it. And all magic has rules." Hermione trailed off, biting her lip. Ron blinked. Wait, are you saying there's a way to bypass that thing?" Hermione turned a few pages. Dumbledore didn't write specifics, but he implied that the guardian isn't invincible, it just follows ancient magical laws. If we can find out what those rules are, we can get past it without needing to fight. A sudden clatter made us all freeze. I spun around, wand raised. Nothing. Just the silent office. But the air felt wrong. Ron tensed. "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, the fire in the hearth flared violently, the flames twisting into an unnatural green. A voice, cold, smooth, and sickeningly familiar, echoed through the room. "Tisk, TSK. You lot never learn, do you?" My blood ran cold. Hermione gasped. "Bellatrix." The flames roared higher, and within them, a shadowed figure emerged. The face of Bellatrix Lestrange, twisted in a wicked grin. "You children really are predictable," she cooed, her eyes gleaming. "Snooping around in places you don't belong. looking for things that are far beyond your understanding. Ron clenched his fists. How did you? Oh, I have my ways, she purred. I see everything now. And I must say, I'm rather disappointed. I thought you'd be further along by now. I took a slow step forward. Why do you want the Batamira? Bellatrix laughed, a chilling, sharp sound. Oh, sweetheart. It's not about wanting. It's about needing. The Dark Lord may be gone, but his legacy isn't finished. There are still pieces left to claim. Pieces that belong to me. The fire crackled violently, and her expression darkened. And let me make something very clear, she whispered. You are all running out of time. With a final flicker, the flames died down, and her image vanished. Silence. Then, Ron let out a shaky breath. Okay. That was horrifying. Hermione's face was pale, but determined. She knows. She's close. I turned to the journal in Hermione's hands. Then we have to be faster. We know there's a way past the Guardian. We just have to find it before she does. We exchanged a final look. The race for the Batamira had truly begun, and the stakes had never been higher. The headmaster's office was eerily silent after Bellatrix's chilling warning. The green flames had long since died down, leaving only the flickering glow of the torches and the heavy weight of our realization she was close. Ron was the first to break the silence. Okay, I know we've had a lot of terrifying moments in our time, but that was near the top of the list. She's been watching us. Watching us. Hermione was already flipping through Dumbledore's journal again, her brow furrowed in deep thought. She said we were running out of time. That means she's either found something or she's on the verge of discovering what we just did. Then we need to move now, I said firmly. We need to find out the Guardian's rules. If Bellatrix figures it out before we do, she'll get to the Batamira first. Hermione nodded and kept reading, flipping through the old, yellow pages as fast as she could without missing anything. I could see her lips moving as she skimmed, taking in every word, every detail. Ron and I stood tense, listening for any sign of movement outside. The castle was still quiet, but the warning Bellatrix had given us was enough to keep my wand tight in my grip. Then, Hermione gasped softly. Here, she whispered, her eyes wide as she pointed at a passage near the middle of the journal. Ron and I leaned in. The writing was hurried, written in a slightly different style, as if Dumbledore himself had been pressed for time when he wrote it. The Guardian does not kill. It does not harm. It warns, it obstructs, it turns away those it deems unworthy. But it does not act beyond its purpose. Its magic is bound to its creator's rule, an old, forgotten force that even I do not fully understand. But if my research is correct, the Guardian follows 3 unbreakable rules. 1. It cannot be deceived. Lies, illusions, and false intentions mean nothing to it. 2. It cannot be defeated. It absorbs spells, nullifies aggression, and retaliates against those who seek to destroy. 3. It will only allow passage to one who meets the conditions of its ancient contract. What that contract entails, I have yet to discover. I read the passage 3 times over, my mind whirring. A contract? What does that mean? A magical oath? Hermione shook her head, deep in thought. No, this sounds different. A contract in ancient magic isn't just a spoken promise. It's something woven into the magic itself. The guardian isn't just a protector, it's an enforcer of a set rule that someone, or something, put in place a long time ago. Ron paled. So, how do we meet the conditions of this contract? Hermione flipped the page, but it was clear Dumbledore hadn't gotten that far. He never found out. Silence settled over us again. Ron ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. A shadow monster that can't be tricked, can't be fought, and only lets through people who meet some ridiculous ancient standard that we don't even know about. I sighed, rubbing my temples. We have one advantage, though. Ron looked doubtful. Do we? I nodded. Dumbledore believed the Guardian wouldn't kill or harm us unless provoked. It only turns away those who aren't worthy. That means we might have a chance to figure out the contract without fighting it. Hermione bit her lip. But we don't know what it's looking for. Worthiness could mean anything: bravery, intelligence, purity of heart, magical ability, anything. We'll have to find out the hard way, I said, standing up straight. We go back. We face it again. Ron looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Do you have a death wish? We don't have a choice, Ron, I said, my voice firm. Bellatrix is out there, and she's watching us. If she figures this out before we do, she'll get to the Batamera first. And I don't need to tell you what happens if she gets her hands on it. Hermione closed the journal carefully. He's right. We need to get back down there. We need to understand the Guardian before it's too late. Ron groaned loudly but didn't argue. Fine. But if I get turned into some cursed shadow creature, I'm haunting you both forever. I managed a small grin despite the tension. Noted. With one final glance at the journal, we tucked it safely into Hermione's bag and slipped back down the spiral staircase. Underscore 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 underscore. Back to the depths. The dungeons felt even colder than before. The stone walls seemed darker, the passage more oppressive. The air had that same unnatural stillness, as if the space itself was holding its breath. We retraced our steps until we stood once again at the threshold of the chamber of the Guardian. The darkness inside was absolute, like stepping into a void. The whispering began almost immediately. You should not be here. Ron shivered. Still creepy. Still hate it. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The shadows shifted instantly, curling inward, forming the shape of the guardian once more. Tall, hooded, unmoving. Its presence was suffocating, but I held my ground. This time, I didn't draw my wand. I didn't cast a spell. I simply stood. The whisper came again. Why do you seek the stone? I swallowed hard. This was it. The test. The contract. The thing that determined whether we were worthy or not. I forced my voice to remain steady. To keep it safe. To protect it from those who would use it for darkness. The guardian tilted its head ever so slightly. The shadows around it twisted, curling around the chamber, as if listening. Then, a second whisper, low, testing. Would you use its power? I hesitated. That was a trick question if I'd ever heard one. Ron and Hermione were silent beside me, waiting for my answer. Slowly, I said, power isn't something to be taken lightly. If the stone is as dangerous as we believe, then it shouldn't be used at all. The guardian's hooded face was unreadable. The air rippled, as if something unseen had shifted. Then, after what felt like an eternity, it spoke again. You do not seek it for greed. You do not seek it for war. But your heart remains uncertain. You have not yet proven yourselves. The shadows stirred, and suddenly, a new archway appeared in the chamber behind the guardian. A doorway that had not been there before. Ron's eyes widened. Did we pass? Hermione looked just as shocked. Not exactly. I think we've been given a chance. The guardian's whisper came one final time. Step forward, and the true test shall begin. My heart pounded. The true test? If everything we had done so far had just been an evaluation, what was waiting for us beyond that door? I exchanged a look with Ron and Hermione. No words were needed. We took a deep breath and stepped through. The moment we stepped through the archway, the temperature dropped. It wasn't just cold, it was the kind of bone-deep chill that seeped into your skin, making every hair on your body stand on end. The shadows behind us swallowed the entrance, leaving us in complete darkness. Then, slowly, the chamber began to glow. Runes, ancient, pulsing with crimson light, appeared on the stone walls. They flickered and shifted, moving like living veins of magic. The air itself felt alive, charged with an unseen force. At the center of the room stood an altar of black stone, and floating just above it, the Batamera. I sucked in a breath. It was smaller than I had imagined, roughly the size of an egg, but its glow was intense. The deep, rich red of the stone seemed almost liquid, as if swirling within itself. It radiated a quiet power, something I couldn't quite define, neither warm nor cold, neither welcoming nor hostile. Ron let out a low whistle. Blimey. There it is. Hermione, however, wasn't looking at the stone. Her eyes were scanning the chamber with growing unease. Something isn't right. I turned to her. What do you mean? We made it through. The guardian let us pass. Exactly. She hugged her arms, as if trying to shake off a bad feeling. If the Guardian was the only test, why would it warn us that the true test was still ahead? A sharp click echoed through the chamber. I barely had time to react before the floor beneath us shifted. The stone tiles trembled, then split apart, sending cracks racing toward the altar. Ron stumbled back. "Oh, no! No, no, no!" The ground collapsed. We fell. The chamber of the lost. I hit the ground hard, air rushing from my lungs as I landed in a sprawling underground cavern. Dust and loose pebbles rained down as Hermione and Ron landed beside me. I groaned, rolling onto my back. "Is everyone?" A sudden movement above made me freeze. The hole we had fallen through was closing. The cracked stone mended itself, sealing us inside. Ron scrambled to his feet. "That's bad. That's very bad." Hermione coughed, brushing dirt from her robes. "I think we just triggered something." I pulled out my wand and illuminated the cavern. The walls stretched high above us, their surfaces covered in glowing red symbols. The runes here were different from the ones above, more chaotic, more frenzied. And then I saw them. Figures. Dozens of stone statues lined the chamber, each frozen in various states of movement. Some had their hands raised in silent pleas, others had expressions twisted in horror. Their details were uncannily lifelike, as if they had been real people once. My stomach turned. "These aren't just statues," Hermione whispered. "They were trapped." Ron's face was pale. "Trapped how?" A low rumbling filled the cavern. The ground shook, and before our eyes, the statues moved. One by one, they turned toward us. I gripped my wand. That's how. The trial of intent. The statues didn't attack. Not yet. They simply watched. Their stone eyes, hollow and unblinking, locked onto us with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. Then, from deep within the cavern, a voice spoke. The stone does not grant power. It reveals. If you seek it, you must prove your truth. The voice wasn't human. It was ancient, layered, as if multiple voices were speaking as one. Hermione straightened. It's another test. Like the Guardian's contract. Ron gulped. Fantastic. Because the first one wasn't terrifying enough. The statues shifted, stepping forward in slow, deliberate movements. Their presence felt overwhelming, like being surrounded by silent judges. The voice returned. One of you may approach the Batamira. Only one. The stone will see into your heart. If you are worthy, you may take it. If not, you will remain here forever. I stiffened. We can't just leave someone behind. The stone doesn't care what we want, Hermione murmured. It wants proof. Ron sighed heavily, rubbing his face. So, how do we decide who goes? None of us spoke for a moment. Then, I stepped forward. I'll go. Ron's head snapped toward me. Are you mad? You don't even know what it's going to do to you. Someone has to do it, I said, voice firm. We don't have time to argue. Bellatrix could be on her way here right now. Hermione hesitated, then nodded. Be careful. I turned toward the altar, forcing my feet to move. The closer I got, the more I could feel the weight of the Badamera's magic. It wasn't humming or pulsing, it was watching me. I reached out. The moment my fingers brushed the stone, my vision shifted. The test of truth. I wasn't in the cavern anymore. I stood in a void, endless and empty. The only thing that existed was the Badamera floating before me. Then, a voice, calm, steady, spoke directly into my mind. Why do you seek me? I swallowed hard. To protect you. To keep you from falling into the wrong hands. The Badamera glowed brighter. And if you could use my power, would you? I hesitated. No. Power like this, it's too dangerous. The light pulsed. Then, the voice became softer. You doubt yourself. You fear what you could become. I flinched. That's not. But it was true, wasn't it? Somewhere deep inside, I had always feared what power could do to me. What it had done to so many others. How easy it was to lose yourself in it. The Badamera was waiting for an answer. I took a shaky breath. Yes, I fear it. Because I know that power changes people. And I never want to become something I'm not. Silence. Then, a brilliant red light engulfed the void. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the cavern. The statues were motionless again. The Badamera was in my hand. Ron's voice broke the silence. You did it. Hermione exhaled in relief. You passed. Before I could respond, the chamber shook violently. A voice, Bellatrix's voice, echoed through the air. I'm afraid that stone belongs to me. I turned sharply. A figure stood at the far end of the cavern, her wand raised, her wild black hair framing her twisted grin. Bellatrix Lestrange had arrived. And she wasn't alone. Bellatrix's voice slithered through the cavern, sending a shiver down my spine. She stood at the far end of the chamber, wand raised, her eyes gleaming with pure malice. But what sent my pulse skyrocketing wasn't just her presence, it was the figures emerging behind her. Dark cloaks. Pale, twisted faces. Death Eaters. Ron swore under his breath. Oh, bloody hell. Hermione's grip tightened around her wand. They must have been following us the entire time. I clenched the red stone in my fist. Its warmth pulsed against my skin as if responding to the tension thickening in the air. This was it. We had what they wanted, and there was no way Bellatrix was leaving without it. She took a slow step forward, a wicked smile spreading across her face. You've done all the hard work for me. How very thoughtful. Her voice dripped with mockery. Ron raised his wand. Not a chance, Lestrange. You're not getting anywhere near this stone. Bellatrix laughed, a high, sharp sound that echoed off the cavern walls. "Oh, little Weasley, you still think you stand a chance against me? Against us?" She gestured to the 3 Death Eaters flanking her. One of them, a tall man with deep-set eyes, sneered. "You're outnumbered. Surrender the stone, and we might let you leave in one piece." I didn't move. My mind was racing. There were 4 of them, but we had one advantage. We knew this place better than they did. Hermione edged closer to me, voice low. "The Guardian said the stone doesn't grant power, it reveals. We don't know what that means yet, but if we're going to use it, we have to figure it out fast." Bellatrix flicked her wand. "No more games, darlings. Hand it over." I felt my grip tighten around the red stone. I wasn't about to let it fall into her hands. "No." Her expression darkened. "Wrong answer." Then she attacked. Bellatrix's first curse streaked through the air, barely missing me as I dove aside. Ron sent a stupefy spell toward the nearest Death Eater, but they blocked it with a quick flick of their wand. The chamber erupted into chaos. Ron and Hermione flung spells in every direction while I ducked behind a jagged rock, trying to get my bearings. Sparks of green, red, and blue illuminated the cavern as curses and counter-curses clashed. Bellatrix's laughter rang out between the blasts. "Pathetic. You think you can fight me?" Ron barely dodged a Cruciatus curse, his face pale as he scrambled for cover. "She's completely insane. You're just figuring that out now?" Hermione shot back, sending a Petrificus Totalis at one of the Death Eaters. I peeked out from behind the rock, my heart pounding. I needed to think we couldn't just keep dodging forever. The red stone was still clutched in my hand, pulsing with warmth. And suddenly, I understood. It reveals. Not power, not strength, but truth. I took a breath and focused. The red stone as warmth spread through my palm, racing up my arm like liquid fire. My vision blurred, then sharpened, and for a split second, I saw everything. Bellatrix. Her aura twisting, writhing like a storm of black tendrils. Pure, unfiltered madness clung to her like a second skin. The Death Eaters. Their faces, their true selves, the fear buried beneath their cruelty, the doubt they tried to hide. And then, myself. The red stone didn't just reveal others. It revealed me. My fear. My uncertainty. The weight of every decision I had made. But beneath it all, determination. This was why the Guardian let me pass. Not because I was powerful, but because I knew who I was, and I would never let this stone fall into darkness. Bellatrix's voice yanked me back to reality. "That's enough hiding." She raised her wand, aiming directly at me. Avada Kedavra. Time slowed. The sickly green light erupted from her wand, and I moved. The red stone flared. A wave of crimson energy exploded outward, colliding with Bellatrix's curse in midair. The force sent her staggering backward, eyes wide with shock. Ron's mouth dropped open. Did you just? I didn't hesitate. We have to end this. Now. Hermione caught on immediately. Use the stone. I focused again, channeling the red stone's energy. The cavern trembled as the truth it carried spread outward. The Death Eaters froze. Their faces twisted, their eyes flickering with something foreign, clarity. One of them, the man who had sneered at us before, suddenly staggered back, his hands shaking. His face drained of color, as if he had just seen something that shattered his entire reality. What is this? He gasped. Bellatrix's head snapped toward him. What are you doing? Fight. But he didn't move. His wand fell from his grasp. The red stone was showing them the truth. Their own fears. Their own doubts. The second Death Eater backed away, horrified. No, this isn't real. Hermione's eyes widened. It's making them see their true selves. Everything they've hidden, even from themselves. Bellatrix snarled, gripping her wand tighter. Fools. Weaklings. I turned my gaze to her. You're afraid too, aren't you? She froze. The red stone shone brighter, and for the first time, I saw her truth. Loneliness. Desperation. She had built herself into something unbreakable, or so she had believed. But deep inside, Bellatrix Lestrange was afraid of being nothing. Afraid of being forgotten. Her expression twisted into a snarl. No, you don't get to. Then, she screamed. The light of the red stone overwhelmed her, and in an instant, she was gone, vanishing in a burst of magic, as if she had never been there at all. The remaining Death Eaters, now trembling, broken, didn't even try to fight. They turned and ran, fleeing into the darkness. Ron let out a shaky breath. What just happened? I looked down at the red stone, its glow now calm, steady. It didn't destroy them. It just showed them the truth. And some people can't handle that. Hermione exhaled, rubbing her temples. That was unbelievable. Ron nodded. Terrifying, but yeah, unbelievable. For a long moment, we just stood there, catching our breath. The cavern, once a battlefield, was now eerily still. And then, Hermione smiled. We did it. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Yeah, we did. The red stone was safe. Bellatrix was gone. And for the first time in what felt like forever, it was over. We returned to the surface just before dawn. The castle was still, the sky tinged with the first hints of morning. As we walked through the quiet halls of Hogwarts, Ron nudged me. So, what do we do with it? I glanced down at the red stone, its warm glow fading as if it, too, was finally at peace. I smiled. We keep it safe. Together. The journey has come to an end. The echoes of battle have faded, and the secrets of the red stone now rest in silence. The halls of Hogwarts stand peaceful once more, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Ron, Hermione, and I have walked through darkness, faced fears, and uncovered the truth hidden beneath the castle's ancient stones. And now, with the stones safe and the night growing deeper, it is time to rest. Feel the stillness of the world around you. Let the quiet embrace you, like the warmth of a familiar place, like the comfort of knowing the story has found its ending. The stars shine high above, keeping watch over the castle, over the world, over you. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. And let yourself drift away, carried by dreams where magic never truly fades. Good night.